pause everything for a second. You're not even ready for this one. The shocking truth just broke, like boom, shattered across every fake smile you once trusted. You were framed, labeled, thrown under the bus, and now everyone's disgusted. Oh wow, right? They switched up faster than the wind. One whisper, and suddenly you're the villain? Nah, this ain't just a story. It's a wake-up call, a mirror cracked open for everyone who's ever been blamed for something they didn't do. You feel that burning in your chest right now? That's not anger. That's clarity. That's your moment. The one where you stop chasing their approval and start walking through their lies like fire doesn't even touch you anymore. Oh yeah, they tried to bury your name, but they didn't realize you were the root, not the seed. You were meant to rise back through the dirt, stronger, louder, and way too real to fake anymore. And you. Shout out to every real one still standing. You watching this right now, you're the reason I made this. You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're just becoming unstoppable. So drop a comment below, tell your truth loud. And let's remind the world being framed doesn't end your story. It starts your legend. They didn't destroy you. They just showed you who they really were. You ever notice how quiet the room gets when the truth walks in? It's not because the truth is loud. No, it's because it doesn't need to scream. It just stands there, calm, unshaken, while everyone else scrambles to act like they didn't just spend months stabbing your name with their fake smiles. Oh wow. The way they all flipped overnight, huh? One rumor, one twist, one whisper, and suddenly you're the villain of a story you didn't even write. That's the funny thing about being framed. It's not about what they say you did. It's about what they want you to represent. A monster, an outcast. The example they can point to and say, see? That's what happens when you stop following the crowd. They didn't need proof. They needed a scapegoat. Someone to carry the weight of their own corruption. And lucky you fit the role perfectly. At first, you fight it. You try to explain, defend, justify. You think truth will save you, that fairness still exists. But oh, reality hits hard, doesn't it? You realize people don't care what's true, they care what's trending. Their loyalty, conditional. Their kindness, transactional. Their morals, for rent. And that's when it hits you. You were never surrounded by allies, only spectators waiting for you to slip. Yeah, it hurts. It rips through your chest like fire. You watch people you trusted twist your silence into guilt. You see their eyes turn cold, their words drip poison, their smiles hide daggers. You start asking yourself, why? Why would they lie? Why would they hate me for something I didn't do? But then it clicks. It's not about you being wrong. It's about you being different. You were never built to kneel, and that threatens them. Oh nah. They didn't want truth. They wanted entertainment. Watching you burn became their favorite show. They framed you not because you failed, but because you refused to fake it. And when you refused to crawl, they decided to call that rebellion. You see, people hate what they cannot control. Your silence, your patience, your refusal to break, it makes them uneasy. They wanted chaos, but you gave them composure. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't play their little game. You stood there and watched them bury themselves in lies they built for you. And here's the part they'll never admit. Deep down, they admire you. The same mouths that spit venom speak your name when no one's around. The same hands that pointed fingers secretly mimic your strength. You're their mirror, and that terrifies them. You expose everything they pretend not to be. So when they say, "You've changed," don't correct them. Smile, because you did. You woke up. You saw the stage for what it was, a rigged show. You learned that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And you realized, being framed doesn't destroy you, it frees you. They thought silence meant surrender. It actually meant strategy. So you stood there, cornered, misjudged, misunderstood. But you didn't break. You calculated. Every glare, every whisper, every fake apology became data. You started listening to the tone behind their words, the fear behind their anger. You realized, oh, they only act brave when the crowd's watching. Alone they shrink. Alone they question what they've done. That's when you stop defending yourself and start observing them. At first, it's strange. The urge to prove your innocence still flickers, but it fades each time you see their hypocrisy louder than your truth. You start understanding that not every battle deserves your sword. Sometimes the most terrifying thing you can do is stay calm. Yeah, calm, while they crumble under the weight of their own lies. It's poetic, isn't it? They built a trap for you but forgot to build an exit for themselves. You begin to see the beauty in being misjudged, because once they frame you, they also reveal themselves. Their greed, their envy, their need for control, all naked now. They can't hide it anymore. Their act collapses, and suddenly the tables turn. You no longer look like the fool. You look like the only one who knew the game from the start. Oh wow, that's when power shifts. Quietly, invisibly, irreversibly. You start walking differently. Not arrogant, but awake. You stop explaining, stop apologizing, stop asking for clarity from people who traded their integrity for comfort. You realize they never hated your mistakes. They hated your potential, your ability to endure what would have broken them 10 times over. They wanted to erase your spirit, but they only sharpened it. Each accusation carved another layer of fear away from your mind. Each betrayal peeled you closer to your truth. And then, you start smiling. Not the fake smile of approval. No. The kind of smile that comes when you've seen everything and still choose to stand tall. You see, patience becomes your weapon. Silence your armor. You don't chase revenge. You outgrow it. You stop reacting. You start creating. You realize that the greatest counterattack is self-mastery. Because when they can't shake your peace, they lose their grip entirely. Nah, they never expected that. They thought they could bury you in shame, but you turned that dirt into foundation. You built strength from rejection, wisdom from pain, and purpose from isolation. That's what frightens them now, your resilience. You became everything they claimed you weren't. You became the proof that storms don't destroy the strong, they refine them. And here's the quiet twist. The same crowd that mocked you begins to mimic your strength. They start speaking your words, walking your walk, studying your moves. Funny, isn't it? The framed one becomes the blueprint. The villain becomes the vision. When the mask cracks, it doesn't just fall off, it shatters. You ever notice how quickly fake confidence fades when truth starts breathing? It's almost poetic, the way they used to laugh loudest, speak boldest, but now their eyes avoid yours. Oh wow, they can feel it. The air shifted. The silence isn't silence anymore, it's judgment, it's consequence. The very thing they thought would destroy you is now circling back to them. At first it's subtle. Whispers start turning directions. The same mouths that once fed lies now hesitate. The same hands that pointed fingers tremble. You see confusion spreading through the same crowd that used to celebrate your downfall. Because deep down, they always knew something didn't add up, but comfort blinded them. It's easier to believe what's convenient than face what's true. Until truth stops knocking and starts breaking the door down. That's where you stand. Now, watching it unfold. Oh, the irony burns. The people who played puppeteers now tangled in their own strings. Every false story they told unravels itself. Every mask slips, every alliance fractures. You don't even have to speak anymore. Your silence does the talking. You just stand there, calm, still, like the storm already passed through you. They called you a liar, yet their own actions expose them now. And here's the real twist. Exposure isn't loud. It's not chaos. It's quiet devastation. It's when they realize there's nowhere left to hide, that their reputation was built on the bones of deceit. They start breaking not because of what you said, but because of what they've become. Yeah, truth has that kind of power. It doesn't fight dirty. It waits, patiently. It lets time reveal everything. You learn that the hardest thing isn't clearing your name. It's watching how quickly others sold their honor for a moment of belonging. That's the sickness of false loyalty. They'll abandon truth to protect an illusion. But now the illusion burns. And who's still standing in the ashes? You, the one they tried to erase. The one they called a fraud, a problem, a threat. You're still here, breathing, evolving, becoming untouchable. Nah, they can't handle that. They can't understand how you still move with peace after all that chaos. How you still look ahead while they drown in their guilt. You forgave in silence. You healed in solitude. And now your very existence feels like judgment to them. You didn't have to expose anyone. Their actions did that for you. The truth doesn't need defenders. It needs time. And time just swung back in your favor. So when they look at you now, when they finally see what they've done, they'll try to rewrite the story again. But it's too late. The frame they built became their mirror. And once they look too close, they won't recognize themselves anymore. Justice doesn't always knock. Sometimes it walks in unannounced. You reach a point where silence isn't peace anymore. It's pressure. Building, waiting. You can feel it in your chest, in the air, in the way people look away when you walk in. Something's shifting. Oh wow. It's not rage, not revenge. It's clarity. The truth is no longer hiding. It's standing tall, demanding balance. For too long, you carried the weight of lies. For too long, they celebrated your downfall. Now the scale starts tilting back. One consequence at a time. You don't plan it. You don't chase it. You just witness it. The same ones who mocked your silence, now choking on their own noise. The same hands that threw dirt now trembling under exposure. And it's not even about you anymore. It's about cause and effect. You reap what you sow, always. They thought they were immune. They thought their masks made them invisible. But nah. Truth remembers every face, every word, every action. It never forgets. It just waits for the right moment to strike, and when it does, it's merciless. At first it feels strange. You thought justice would feel loud, explosive, dramatic, but it's quiet, precise, ironic. You don't hear screams, you see silence. You don't see punishment, you see lessons. They lose what they valued most. Peace, trust, reputation. The world starts treating them the way they treated you. Suddenly they understand what it feels like to be doubted, excluded, blamed. Oh, the taste of their own poison isn't sweet anymore, is it? And yet you don't gloat. You don't cheer. Because that's not who you are anymore. You've evolved past their games. You don't celebrate pain. You acknowledge balance, the same balance they tried to break. You learned that justice doesn't need vengeance. It just needs patience. It comes on its own time, like a shadow returning to its owner. You simply stand there, watching the truth restore what was stolen from you, dignity, clarity, peace. Yeah, the same crowd that once believed the lies now sees. They whisper differently now. The disgust in their eyes, gone, replaced by guilt, maybe even respect. But it doesn't matter. You're not living for their validation anymore. You've already found something deeper. Control. Control over your emotions, your reactions, your choices. They can't touch that. They can't twist that. Nah, the true reckoning isn't what happens to them. It's what happens in you. When you realize you don't need revenge because their downfall doesn't feed your growth. Your peace does. You stopped waiting for their apologies. You stopped hoping for their change. You became the consequence of your own endurance. You became the reminder that truth, no matter how buried, never dies quietly. The storm didn't change you. It revealed you. There's a strange quiet that comes after everything collapses. The noise fades. The faces disappear. The rumors die down. And what's left is you. Alone, but not lonely. Scarred, but not broken. Different, stronger. Oh wow. It hits you one morning. The realization that you're not the same person they tried to destroy. You're something sharper now. Cleaner. You've shed the need to be understood. You no longer seek fairness in a world that thrives on distortion. You stopped asking why they did it, because the answer no longer matters. You survived being framed, humiliated, and abandoned. And through it all, you found a version of yourself that no comfort could have created. Pain became your mentor. Isolation became your training ground. You learned discipline through disappointment, control through chaos, and purpose through betrayal. What they meant for harm became the very fire that forged your clarity. Oh, the irony is beautiful, isn't it? They built your stage while trying to bury your name. And yeah, it's strange at first to walk without bitterness, to remember everything but feel nothing. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means understanding. You realize that not every wound is meant to bleed forever. Some are meant to remind. They remind you to choose differently, to speak less, to observe more, to protect your peace like it's the last pure thing in a noisy world. You no longer need applause. You've seen what shallow praise costs. You no longer chase belonging. You've learned that solitude with integrity is better than company with deceit. Nah, you don't want to be accepted anymore. You want to be real. And that's rare now. That's power. So when they see you again, calm, steady, unbothered, it confuses them. They expect the anger, the retaliation, the noise. But you give them none of that. You just move with a quiet certainty that shakes them more than your rage ever could. Because peace, when earned through fire, feels like power itself. They don't know what to do with that. You're no longer reacting to their noise. You're leading through your stillness. Oh nah. You didn't win by fighting them. You won by outlasting them. Time became your ally, truth your weapon, patience your crown. You didn't have to destroy anyone. They did that to themselves, trying to destroy you. You simply stood long enough for truth to surface. You walked long enough for justice to catch up. And now, every step you take carries the weight of lessons learned in silence. That's what becoming truly means. Not changing who you are, but refining who you were always meant to be. You became proof that endurance outlives deception. You became the echo of truth that can't be silenced. And now, when they whisper your name, it's no longer in disgust, it's in awe. Because the one they framed became the one they can't forget. And there it is. The mask ripped off, the game exposed. Oh wow, the same ones who pointed fingers are now pointing at each other, huh? The truth finally walked in. Quiet, unshakable, undeniable, and now every fake narrative just collapsed under its own weight. You were framed, yeah, but look at you now, still standing, stronger, sharper, unbreakable. They thought they ruined your name. But nah, they built your legacy. Every lie they told became your lesson. Every betrayal became your blueprint. You turned pain into precision and silence into strategy. That's not weakness, that's mastery. So listen, if this speech hits something deep inside you, don't just scroll past. Drop a comment below. Tell me what part woke you up. Tell me who needs to hear this next. Because this isn't just a video, it's a movement. A reminder that truth always finds its way back home. Yeah. They can frame your image, twist your words, fake. Every move you make is being recorded by time itself. Not watched, not judged, recorded. And time is ruthless. It forgets excuses, ignores intentions, and only preserves results. You may think your actions disappear the moment they're done, but the truth is darker and far more precise. Nothing fades. Everything ages. The question is not whether your moves will age, but how. Most people rot in regret because their actions decay. Yours don't. Yours harden, yours sharpen, yours age perfectly. And the reason why has nothing to do with luck, talent, or fate. It has everything to do with how you move when no one is watching, when fear is loud, and when hesitation would be easier. The first keynote of this speech centers on the idea that time is not a neutral backdrop, but an active filter that preserves only deliberate action. It explains that every move a person makes is recorded not by memory or opinion, but by consequence. Time does not care about excuses, emotions, or intentions. It only validates what was done with precision and awareness. This keynote challenges the common belief that actions disappear once the moment passes. Instead, it presents the darker truth that actions either decay into regret or mature into clarity. Moves that age perfectly are those made with full ownership, understanding that every decision leaves a residue that will be revisited later, whether by circumstance, reputation, or personal reflection. At the core of this keynote is the principle of accountability. Most people rush through life trying to avoid responsibility, hiding behind chaos, luck, or external blame. Their actions rot because they were made to escape discomfort rather than confront reality. The keynote emphasizes that perfectly aging moves come from individuals who accept total responsibility for outcomes before acting. This acceptance forces deeper thinking, sharper judgment, and restraint. When you know you cannot blame anyone else later, you move differently. You slow down, you observe more, you choose more carefully. This discipline is what allows actions to withstand time rather than collapse under it. It also highlights the role of patience as a form of power. It reframes patience not as waiting passively, but as deliberate control over timing. Those whose moves decay are often those who act to relieve anxiety or prove something in the moment. Their urgency exposes weakness. By contrast, the individual who respects time understands that moving too early reveals intent and vulnerability, while moving too late leads to irrelevance. Perfect timing is not accidental. It is earned through observation, restraint, and trust in preparation. When action finally occurs, it lands with weight because it was allowed to mature before being released. Another key insight is that time rewards clarity over speed. The keynote explains that clarity is built through self-awareness, knowing values, limits, and direction. Without this internal alignment, actions are inconsistent and fragile. People contradict themselves over time because their choices were never anchored. In contrast, moves made from clarity remain defensible years later because they still align with identity and purpose. Even when outcomes were painful or costly, they do not produce regret because they were honest. This honesty gives actions structural integrity, allowing time to polish rather than erode them. The further explores how fear interacts with time. Fear pushes people to rush, to overreact, or to freeze. Those who master fear do not eliminate it. They use it as a signal to refine decisions. Acting despite fear, but not under its control, creates moves that endure. Time respects courage that is informed, not reckless. When fear is acknowledged and integrated into judgment, actions gain depth. They are not impulsive reactions, but calculated responses to reality. This depth is what gives actions longevity. Finally, the keynote defines perfectly aging moves as those that require no explanation later. They may have been misunderstood in the moment, criticized or ignored, but they make sense with time. The individual who makes such moves does not rely on immediate validation. They trust the long arc of consequence. Time eventually reveals intent, precision, and discipline. What once looked slow becomes strategic. What once looked risky becomes necessary. This keynote teaches that when you move with responsibility, patience, clarity, and courage, time becomes an ally rather than a threat. Every action gains value as it ages, not because it was flawless, but because it was deliberate. Focuses on timing as the hidden force that determines whether an action decays or matures with time. It explains that movement alone is meaningless without synchronization with reality. Many people act constantly yet leave no lasting imprint because their actions are mistimed, driven by emotion, pressure, or impatience rather than awareness. This keynote exposes the uncomfortable truth that most failure is not caused by wrong decisions, but by right decisions made at the wrong moment. Perfectly aging moves are not fast, they are precise. They arrive exactly when conditions are ready to support them. At the heart of this keynote is the understanding that urgency is often a disguise for fear. People rush because they are afraid of missing out, being forgotten, or losing control. This fear pushes them into premature action, revealing intent too early and inviting resistance before leverage is built. The keynote emphasizes that those who move with mastery do not fear silence or delay. They understand that stillness can be strategic. Waiting allows situations to unfold, opponents to expose themselves, and opportunities to ripen. When action finally occurs, it feels inevitable because the groundwork was laid long before anyone noticed. This keynote also highlights the discipline required to hold back when instinct demands movement. Restraint is not inactivity, it is controlled readiness. While others exhaust themselves with constant motion, the individual who respects timing conserves energy, sharpens perception, and refines strategy. This discipline separates those whose actions fade from those whose actions endure. Perfect timing amplifies impact. A single move executed at the right moment can outweigh years of scattered effort. Time does not reward effort, it rewards alignment. Another crucial element of this keynote is the relationship between timing and leverage. Acting too early often means operating from a position of weakness. Information is incomplete, resources are insufficient, and support is unstable. Acting too late means leverage has already shifted and influence is lost. The keynote explains that those whose moves age perfectly understand how to build leverage quietly. They allow information to accumulate, patterns to repeat, and conditions to become favorable. When they act, they do so from strength, not desperation. This is why their decisions hold up under scrutiny long after the moment has passed. He also explores how timing interacts with perception. People remember not just what you do, but when you do it. A well-timed decision reshapes narratives. What once looked risky becomes visionary in hindsight. What once appeared slow becomes strategic. Timing controls interpretation, and interpretation shapes legacy. Moves made at the right moment require no defense later, because time itself explains them. This is why those who master timing rarely need to justify their past. Their actions age into clarity. Fear plays a subtle role here as well. Fear of judgment, fear of delay, fear of missing the window, all pressure individuals into premature action. The keynote teaches that mastering timing requires the courage to be misunderstood temporarily, to wait while others doubt, to stay silent while others rush. This willingness to endure short-term discomfort in exchange for long-term precision is what allows actions to mature instead of decay. Time eventually exposes who moved from fear and who moved from understanding. In conclusion, the second keynote defines timing as the difference between noise and impact. Perfectly aging moves are not reactive, they are synchronized. They respect the rhythm of reality rather than trying to force outcomes. When intention, preparation, and awareness align with the right moment, action becomes durable. It withstands criticism, evolves with context, and gains strength as time passes. This keynote reinforces that those who learn to wait without weakening and act without hesitation when the moment arrives are the ones whose moves time does not erase, but instead perfects. Centers on awareness as the silent force that gives actions depth, accuracy, and longevity. It explains that timing alone is not enough. One must understand what they are moving within. Many actions fail not because they lack effort or courage, but because they are executed without reading the environment, the people involved, and the hidden dynamics beneath the surface. Awareness is what transforms action from reaction into strategy. It allows a person to move in harmony with reality instead of colliding with it. Perfectly aging moves are born from perception sharpened enough to anticipate consequences before they unfold. At the core of this keynote is the idea that nothing exists in isolation. Every decision interacts with systems, emotions, power structures, and patterns of behavior. Those who lack awareness act as if their choices occur in a vacuum, only to be blindsided by reactions they never considered. The keynote emphasizes that awareness is the ability to see beyond the immediate moment, to recognize motives behind words, tension beneath calm, and opportunity hidden inside delay. This depth of perception allows actions to be placed where they will not only succeed, but endure. Also explores situational intelligence, the capacity to read shifts in energy, power, and intention. Every environment communicates information, but only those who listen understand it. People reveal themselves through patterns, not promises. Systems expose their weaknesses through repetition, not announcements. The individual whose moves age perfectly pays attention to these patterns. They study before acting. They notice who gains and who loses from certain outcomes. They understand when silence is louder than speech, and when restraint is more threatening than aggression. This intelligence allows them to act with precision that appears effortless but is built on relentless observation. Self-awareness is equally critical. The keynote explains that unexamined emotion corrupts decision-making. Ego, fear, pride, and insecurity distort perception, pushing people to act to protect their image rather than their future. Those whose moves decay often acted from emotional urgency, trying to prove something, escape something, or impress someone. By contrast, individuals with high self-awareness recognize their emotional state without letting it drive their behavior. They know when their judgment is compromised and wait until clarity returns. This internal discipline ensures that actions are not only strategic, but consistent with identity, allowing them to age without contradiction. The also highlights anticipation as a function of awareness. Perfect moves account for reaction, resistance, and consequence. They are not surprised by pushback because pushback was expected. They are not shaken by criticism because it was already priced into the decision. Awareness allows a person to live the aftermath of their actions mentally before executing them. This foresight creates calm under pressure and confidence in execution. When the outcome aligns with expectation, even adversity reinforces the wisdom of the move rather than undermining it. Another important insight is that awareness reduces wasted movement. Those who see clearly do not overextend over-explain, or overcommit. They understand that energy is finite and exposure is dangerous. Every action is measured for necessity and impact. This restraint is why their actions remain intact over time. They do not create messes that require cleanup later. They do not burn bridges impulsively or make promises they cannot sustain. Their awareness protects them from future damage. Ultimately, the third keynote teaches that awareness is what allows actions to mature rather than collapse. Time rewards those who understood the terrain they were moving through. When awareness guides intention and timing, actions become resilient. They withstand reinterpretation, criticism, and shifting circumstances. Years later, they still make sense. They still align. They still hold power. Perfectly aging moves are not accidents. They are the result of deep perception applied with discipline. Awareness is the difference between acting and mastering action, and it is what ensures that time does not erode your decisions, but sharpens them, focuses on the compounding nature of deliberate action, and how perfectly aging moves are never isolated events, but links in a chain that grows stronger over time. It explains that most people judge actions by immediate results, which causes them to underestimate decisions whose true value unfolds gradually. Actions made with clarity, timing, and awareness do not fade after the moment passes, they accumulate. Each move sets conditions for the next, quietly shaping future options, perceptions, and leverage. This is why some paths appear to accelerate over time, while others stall. One is built on compounding precision, the other on scattered effort. At the core of this keynote is the idea that consistency multiplies impact. Perfectly aging moves are aligned with a long-term direction, not short-term emotion. When actions are consistent in principle, even small decisions reinforce each other. They create coherence. Over time, this coherence becomes power. People begin to associate reliability, intent, and depth with your presence. Opportunities align more easily. Resistance weakens. The environment adapts. None of this happens suddenly, which is why most people miss it. But compounding does not require visibility. It requires alignment. The keynote also emphasizes that compounding only works when actions are clean. Messy decisions, those driven by ego, impulse, or fear, create friction that cancels momentum. They demand correction later, draining energy and weakening trust. In contrast, deliberate actions reduce future effort. They simplify rather than complicate. This efficiency is why such moves age well. They do not create contradictions that need explaining. They do not force reversals that erode credibility. Instead, they form a stable structure that supports future growth. Time strengthens what is structurally sound. Another important insight is that compounding influence operates quietly. Loud moves attract attention, but quiet moves change conditions. The keynote explains that those whose actions age perfectly often operate beneath notice, allowing time to do the work of validation. They resist the temptation to prove themselves early. They focus on positioning rather than performance. Each decision slightly improves their vantage point, increasing access to information, resources, or influence. Over time, these small positional advantages stack, creating outcomes that appear disproportionate to any single action. The also explores how compounding reshapes identity. Repeated deliberate actions reinforce self, trust, and discipline. Each correct decision strengthens confidence, not as emotion, but as evidence. This internal compounding matters as much as external results. It creates stability under pressure and patience during uncertainty. When challenges arise, the individual does not panic because their past decisions have built a foundation that can absorb stress. This resilience allows future moves to remain precise rather than reactive, continuing the cycle of aging action. A critical aspect of this keynote is understanding that compounding requires restraint. Not every opportunity should be taken. Not every battle should be fought. Perfectly aging moves are selective. They prioritize decisions that support long-term structure rather than short-term gain. This selectivity prevents dilution of focus and preserves integrity of direction. Over time, this discipline creates a reputation for depth and seriousness. Others may not understand the restraint in the moment, but time reveals its value. Ultimately, the fourth keynote teaches that actions age perfectly when they belong to a larger architecture of intent. They are not random expressions of effort, but deliberate investments in a future that is being quietly constructed. Compounding turns patience into power and consistency into inevitability. When each move strengthens the next instead of undermining it, time becomes an amplifier rather than a judge. This is why perfectly aging moves gain weight, clarity, and authority as years pass. They were never meant to stand alone, but to build something that grows stronger with time. The centers on mastery over fear and emotional discipline as the hidden requirement for actions that age perfectly. It explains that fear is the most corrosive force acting on decision-making, not because fear itself is weakness, but because unmanaged fear distorts timing, awareness, and intent. Most actions that decay over time were not wrong in logic. They were rushed, softened, or exaggerated under emotional pressure. Perfectly aging moves are made by individuals who do not eliminate fear, but control it. They understand that fear is inevitable when stakes are real, and instead of letting it dictate action, they use it as a signal to slow down, sharpen judgment, and commit fully only when clarity is restored. At the core of this keynote is the idea that emotional reactions create fragile decisions. People act to escape discomfort, to quiet anxiety, to prove worth, or to avoid being judged. These motivations contaminate action. When time passes and emotions fade, those decisions no longer make sense, which is why regret emerges. The keynote emphasizes that actions driven by emotional relief rarely survive reflection. In contrast, moves that age perfectly are made from emotional restraint. They are not reactions, they are responses. The individual pauses long enough to separate feeling from fact, impulse from necessity. That pause is where longevity is born. He also explores the role of fear and hesitation. Fear does not only cause reckless action, it also causes paralysis. Many people miss defining moments because fear convinces them to wait for certainty that never comes. The fifth keynote clarifies that mastery is not about waiting until fear disappears, but about acting once fear has been measured. Perfectly aging moves often involve risk, but it is calculated risk. The individual understands what can be lost, what can be gained, and what can be tolerated. This realism prevents fantasy-driven decisions and ensures that even bold actions remain grounded. When time revisits these choices, They still hold logic and integrity. Another crucial aspect of this keynote is solitude. Emotional discipline is rarely forged in crowds. It is built in silence, where there is no validation, no reassurance, and no external pressure to perform. The keynote explains that individuals whose moves age perfectly are comfortable being misunderstood temporarily. They do not rush to explain themselves or seek approval to calm their nerves. This tolerance for isolation protects decision-making from contamination. By the time they act, the choice has already survived internal resistance, doubt, and fear. That internal trial is what gives the action durability. He also emphasizes consistency under pressure. Fear intensifies when outcomes are uncertain or when opposition appears. Those without emotional discipline begin to contradict themselves, overcorrect, or abandon direction. These inconsistencies are what cause actions to unravel over time. Perfectly aging moves come from steadiness. Even when adjustments are necessary, they are made without panic. The individual remains aligned with principle rather than emotion. This steadiness creates a clear narrative, when viewed later, one that still makes sense because it was never hijacked by fear in the first place. Teaches that courage is not dramatic. It is quiet, controlled, and repeatable. Grand gestures driven by adrenaline may impress in the moment, but they rarely age well. Courage that ages well is disciplined. It shows up as restraint when others overact, commitment when others retreat, and silence when others justify. Time respects this kind of courage because it is stable. It does not collapse under reinterpretation. It does not require rewriting. The keynote concludes that mastery over fear is what allows all other elements, timing, awareness, and compounding to function properly. When fear is controlled, actions remain clean. When actions remain clean, time has nothing to erode. That is why moves made from emotional discipline do not decay. They mature. Centers on legacy as the final proof of perfectly aging action, emphasizing that time ultimately measures not effort, not intention, but endurance of impact. It explains that every move a person makes contributes to a long-term imprint that extends beyond immediate outcomes. While many people focus on short-term wins or losses, the individual whose moves age perfectly understands that true power lies in what remains after attention fades. Legacy is not about recognition or praise. It is about structural influence, the way deliberate actions reshape behavior, perception, and opportunity long after the moment has passed. At the heart of this keynote is the idea that legacy is built unintentionally, but not accidentally. Those who chase legacy rarely achieve it because they prioritize appearance over substance. In contrast, individuals whose actions age perfectly focus on precision, consistency, and alignment. They are not trying to be remembered, they are trying to be correct. Over time, this correctness compounds into reputation, credibility, and influence. Systems adapt around them. People begin to trust their judgment without needing explanation. This silent authority is the product of decisions that held up under pressure, criticism, and reinterpretation. The emphasizes that legacy is created through durability, not dominance. Loud victories fade quickly, especially when they are driven by ego or spectacle. Quiet consistency, however, accumulates weight. Actions taken with discipline, restraint, and clarity survive changing narratives and shifting contexts. even when outcomes were unfavorable. The logic behind the decision remains defensible. This is what allows time to validate the individual rather than expose them. Legacy is not perfection, it is coherence across time. Another key insight is that legacy depends on restraint as much as action. Every choice made eliminates other possibilities. Those whose actions decay often acted to satisfy the moment, sacrificing future leverage for immediate relief. Perfectly aging moves preserve optionality. They leave room to adapt without contradiction. This flexibility ensures that the individual's path appears intentional in hindsight, even when circumstances changed. Time rewards those who did not trap themselves with impulsive commitments or emotional decisions. He also highlights that legacy is transmitted through example rather than instruction. People may forget what was said, but they remember patterns of behavior. Consistent precision, emotional discipline, and strategic patience become reference points for others, even unconsciously. This influence does not require authority or position. It emerges naturally when actions repeatedly prove reliable. Over time, others adjust their expectations, behavior, and decisions in response. This is legacy operating quietly, reshaping the environment without confrontation. An important dimension of this keynote is the acceptance of delayed validation. Those whose moves age perfectly are comfortable not being understood immediately. They recognize that clarity often arrives later, when outcomes unfold and patterns become visible. This patience protects them from over-explaining, defending, or compromising decisions to satisfy short-term perception. Time becomes the validator. What once appeared slow, cautious, or distant eventually reveals itself as deliberate. This delayed recognition is not a flaw, it is a feature of durable action. Ultimately, the sixth keynote defines legacy as the residue of disciplined decision-making. When intention, timing, awareness, emotional mastery, and consistency align, actions do not fade. They shape context. They influence future choices, both one's own and others. They reduce friction, increase trust, and create momentum that persists beyond individual moments. Time does not need to be persuaded, it reveals. And when it does, it favors those whose moves required no revision. Perfectly aging actions are not remembered because they were loud or dramatic, but because they endured. Legacy is simply time agreeing with you.